Principal Matters Podcast, episode 485. Hi, friends. It's Will Parker back with my co host, Dr. Jen Schwanke, for another Principal Matters. Jen, this week we're going to be talking to a guest named Jan Harrell, who she's one of these people that I'm so glad that I met because she's doing amazing work when it comes to student wellness, not just in schools, but in places that support students all over the U.S. But before we get there, we have a question and answer time, and this week's Q&A is sponsored by Summer Pops Math Workbooks. So principals, when students practice math over the summer, your math scores go up. So what is your summer math plan for this year? Right now is the time to be thinking about it. So a great way to start is by ordering a free summer workbook sample at summerpopsworkbooks.com. Reach out to my friend Pete there, and you'll get those samples and be able to look through and figure out, okay, which of these would be the most helpful for my students. So check that out at summerpopsworkbooks.com. Jen, you brought this question a couple of weeks ago, and so we decided to bring it back today. And I'm going to have you read it, and then let's have this discussion in the few minutes that we have for Q&A.
Okay, if I read the question, you have to answer first. You know that's the deal, right? So here's the question. We all know it's very difficult to change one's mind. So, Will, when was the last time you were surprised to learn something new? And how did you feel learning that new thing?
Oh,
And it
man.
doesn't have to be to do with your work. It could be anything.
Okay, I'm going to try to answer this question without divulging anybody else's confidentiality, but I was in a conversation with my son a couple of weeks ago at supper, and it turned from opinion into argument.
Uh-huh.
And I was kind of holding my ground on, no, I don't think you're thinking about this correctly. And he was holding his ground on, no, I don't think you're thinking about this correctly. And then all of a sudden, it just came back to my mind. What if I've been teaching leaders when it comes to trying to navigate really complex situations? And that is avoid the binary. Like it doesn't have to be an A or B. That's probably more complex. So I actually stopped and thought to myself, okay, I'm probably not seeing his perspective, and he may not be seeing mine. So I just said it out loud. What if the situation is more complex than just you're right or I'm right? And so let's think about it that way. And Jen, it was a really productive conversation.
Right.
And so I can celebrate this one. I'm not always that wise in those moments, but it was just helpful for me to take a step away from that moment and kind of try to bring myself into my own learning. So I don't know if that answers the question. That was a moment where I was surprised to learn something new about his perspective by giving myself the space to not make it an argument, but an opportunity to be curious.
Right. I love this question because I am the worst at learning something new. I'm the worst at it. I am. I don't like it. I don't want to learn something new because I don't want to be bad at something for a while. I will avoid new learning at all costs. And I don't necessarily mean book learning or even a new skill at work. I'm talking, roller skating. I don't want to learn to roller skate, or I don't want to go to jazzercise. I don't want to be the worst person in the room at doing that, right? There's a lot of things I want to know how to do and I won't try. Knitting, painting, like name it, right? So the last time I was surprised to learn something new was when I launched my newsletter, and my friend Danny Bauer was like, "Oh, you can figure out this platform." I'm like, "No, I actually really can't. I'm not good at that." Well, I forced myself to. I'm still not good at it at all, but I forced myself to watch some videos, to try a few new things. I cannot stress how incompetent I still am, but I was surprised at myself that I could do it. I just had to force it.
Oh, I love that.
There's a lot of things, and I think especially as I get older and realize I'm not going to be, there's going to be a time in the next, I don't know, 5 years or so where I am not working for a school district anymore, and the learning isn't going to come to me. I'm going to have to go find it. And I think I'm going to have to become much more of a risk taker and change my mind about learning new things. I'm going to have to do that. So I see it coming.
Oh my gosh. I know these are 5-minute Q&As, but I'm going to share one more just because I can't help it. And it's our show, so I can do this.
You can do whatever you want.
So about a month ago, I decided to start using TikTok for the first time. And it was
Oh,
so funny because same thing, Jen. I was like, "Oh, I don't want another platform." And,
right,
but now that you and I are doing video, I thought, well, we can start sharing reels. So if anybody follows us on social media, you've probably seen the reels, and we've been learning how to use it. We don't always do it perfectly because you have to, edit and add captions and all those things. But it's been a learning process. But here's the funny part, Jen. Now that I only have like 100 followers on TikTok. So if you want to follow us, find me. I don't even know what my tag would be. Just look up William D. Parker or Principal Matters. Um, but even when you look at the stats, like people watching your videos and stuff, you know what the average amount of time someone stays on a TikTok video is?
oh, what?
Like 6 seconds,
Oh,
like or
they
9
just
seconds.
flip,
Yeah,
yeah,
because people just flip through it. So after about a month of like every day posting something thoughtful, and I was like, people aren't even listening to
right,
most of it anyway. So, but the point is this. Thank you for bringing that question. We all have something new to learn, and by learning it, we've discovered things we didn't know before, and it keeps us fresh. So
right.
I hope you guys stay learners too. Well, Jen, I'm looking so forward to introducing Jan Harrell to today's audience and tell listeners how they can stay connected with you this week.
Yep, stay connected with me at jenschwanke.com or sign up for my newsletter there, and it will be a little treat in your inbox every Tuesday.
And you can see today's show notes, all of our resources, and anything to do with this podcast at williamdparker.com. Until next time, thanks for doing what matters, and we hope you enjoy today's show. Let's take a moment to thank our sponsors, and then we'll be right back. Why is IXL used in 95 of the top 100 U.S. school districts? Because it works. Research across 45 states shows that IXL schools outperform other schools on state tests. With IXL, you get a personalized online learning and teaching solution that helps you improve achievement, empower teachers, track progress, and more. This one platform for K-12 helps teachers accomplish what normally would require dozens of other tools. For example, as students practice skills, IXL automatically adapts to ensure each learner is always supported and challenged at the right level. IXL also provides every student with a personalized learning plan to help them close knowledge gaps effectively. One of my favorite things about IXL is their personalized test prep tool. For exams like the SAT and ACT, IXL will analyze a student's most recent score and generate a custom list of skills to help them boost their scores. If you want to take the load off your teachers so they can do their best work, IXL can help. Learn more at IXL.com/PM.
You're listening to Principal Matters, the School Leaders Podcast.
Hi, friends. This is Will Parker, host of Principal Matters, the School Leaders Podcast, where each week we bring you inspiring, innovative, and imaginative ideas for your own school leadership. And this week, we're going to be talking to my special guest, Dr. Jan Harrell, about preventing trauma before it happens. Jan Harrell is the creator of emotional education curricula now used in schools and prisons with materials accepted for use in both U.S. and Canadian federal prison systems, programs that help prevent bullying, build empathy, and transform communities. Her curriculum brings students and inmates together by highlighting the shared experience and transcending cultural, ethnic, and racial divides. Passionate about advancing human understanding, she offers her programs to schools and juvenile justice corrections at no cost, driven by a vision of preventing trauma before it happens and empowering young people with a lifelong emotional wisdom. Jan Harrell, welcome to Principal Matters Podcast. That's a brief summary for a lifetime of work. So I want to introduce you to our listeners. But before we go deep into your work, tell us something that may surprise people to know about you.
Well, this is something that really surprised me. I was driven into my field because of the pain of people suffering, and I didn't know what to do to help. So I thought, I've got to figure out, what do you do besides care about them? But almost the day I got my doctorate, shortly after, I had this epiphany that changed my life. The epiphany was, what if Freud hadn't been a doctor? What if he'd been a teacher? People evidently liked to talk to him. He was approachable and thoughtful and introspective and welcoming. And he probably would have heard things like, Mr. Freud, why do I have to pee 20 times before I do a presentation? Or Mr. Freud, I feel like barfing before a test. And he would have offered classes in understanding our emotional world. Then instead of mental illness, which came under the umbrella of the medical field he was in, we would have had self-ignorance. And instead of mental health, we would have had self-awareness. And in that moment, I was transformed from a licensed psychologist to an educator.
Oh, I love that intro, Jan. Thank you for giving us that perspective, because the wisdom in that, as a practitioner, and you are a clinical psychologist and you've had a practice for a long time and you still practice today, but your passion has been, okay, how do I take these lessons that I've been learning with my clients and make them something where I can transfer that wisdom to people, especially young people, so that they don't become my clients. Or if they do become my clients, they already have tools that
Yes,
they could be using long before they get to the place where they're calling me. And
exactly.
so you have I'd love for you to just take leaders back into why addressing the painful anxiety students bring with them each day has become a passion for you of trying to pull others into this conversation.
If we look at the history of human survival, it has been about developing problem-solving abilities and physical well-being. So our schools have reflected that, which is fabulous. We've gotten to all kinds of advances in health and all kinds of scientific, logistical abilities. But what has been missing is the third component that it's occurred to me recently. What I'm really talking about, Will, is a revolution in education, that the neglected part of us is knowledge about this animal body that we live in. And there's no shame to calling it an animal. We're not a rock or a plant body. We live in an animal reactive body. And we're taught toilet training. We're taught how to manage our food, how to take care of our bodies so we stay healthy. But we're not taught about the emotional world that is part of the same system of signals that comes out of our body, just like hunger, thirst, fatigue, the longing for company. And if we don't know about what the meaning is of the emotional alarm that goes on in us, we don't know the appropriate way to interpret it and to act upon it. For example, if one of us had a smoke alarm go off right now in the middle of this recording, we would know what it meant. We would say, I've got to stop. We go sniff around, find the source of the fire, of the smoke, and we take care of it and come back and talk. But if an emotional alarm goes off and we have never been taught to understand it, then we're going to get into a reactive stance. And it's fine to react to some things, like if a mosquito flew by right now and I'd smack at it, that's an understandable thing. But if you said something that puzzled me or startled me or hurt my feelings or made me mad, I don't want to smack you. Good thing we're separated here. So, so my goal is when we don't know what's going on inside of us, we are left with nothing but our reactiveness. If we educate ourselves, if we do emotional toilet training, I call it, there's no shame to being ignorant. We're born that way. There's nothing wrong with us. I don't have a Chinese disorder. I've just never studied Chinese, but it's not a disorder, it's an ignorance. So, what I have found is that with this approach, people can enter into a lifelong journey of learning and growing and getting bigger and more free inside, more peaceful, more wise, with absolutely no shame, no judgment, no shame. This is our destiny to
I
be
love that.
evolving beings.
So let me pause for a second for Principles Matters listeners and let them know that whenever I bring guests on this show, a lot of times it's because I've become aware of something that a guest is doing or teaching. You had reached out to me probably months ago and had begun to share through LinkedIn just some personal messages with, hey, Will, I know you're connected to educators. Here's things I've been doing with schools. And Jan, I told you this before the recording in our last conversation that I get a lot of outreach from people, and sometimes they're AI generated, sometimes they're real people. And yours were so personable that I just started digging into, okay, what is Jan Harrell doing? What is she quote unquote selling? And I quickly discovered you weren't selling anything. You are a practitioner who has developed instruction and curricula that's helping students, juveniles in correction facilities and within schools.
Right.
And you've seen it transforming the lives of others, and you just want to give it away. And so when I jumped into a conversation with you and asked you, okay, how can I introduce you to my audience? You were gracious enough to say yes. So I want to take this passion that you have for what I call teaching people to respond, not react, because
Yes.
that's exactly what you're saying is how do we teach an understanding of ourselves so that we don't think that everything that's going on inside of us is a disorder, but instead it's just sometimes a lack of understanding so that we can become the kinds of emotionally healthy people that we need. And you're seeing this not just as a outside observer. You live and walk with people every single day that you're like, I'm teaching these skills so that people can have more thriving and flourishing lives. We can be teaching this to students too. So take us there. How has these ideas and practices turned into this curricula?
One of my friends was the dean of students of a local high school. And she was telling me one day about the suffering of her students and the cliques that occurred. That's really common. All of us who've been in high school can remember that. But the suffering was what was clearest to me. And suffering stirs my creativity. I used to work for the YMCA, and I'm used to taking children where I want them to go, starting where they are and building concepts and their connection to their own selves in a way that they can become the concepts, they can internalize them by that inner connection. So I wrote out my concepts experientially so that anyone does not have to be trained in psychology. In the prisons, the facilitators are actually inmates themselves. And what I found, my friend piloted my program in her high school, and they found that the issues of being a human being transcended all of the superficial differences. Like I may have blonde hair and you have dark, but the feelings that we have about ourselves or about having hair at all, that transcends every difference between us. And what they found in that high school is that kids were brought together into an intimate family experience where the fears, molestation, sexual abuse, bullying, all of these horrible secrets that they'd kept to themselves were shared and dealt with in that group. And I realized I want to be able to get this out to everyone because you don't need me. I wasn't necessary. I did the prep work. And then the class did it themselves. And I have it spelled out so explicitly that the teacher doesn't have to be a counselor or psychologist, but a guide, a companion in sharing this human journey and the teacher's own experiences. And it's effective. What really got me going was when my program was offered to the worst group in a prison in Ohio. It was the teenage male gang member felons. And their culture was to be cold and tough and hard and untouchable. And in the 14 sessions of my program, these boys melted and they became sweethearts and they became thoughtful, kind, interactive. And I went, oh my God in heaven, this works with the most lost children. And it worked for adults. When they gave it to the adult population in the prison, the warden told me that 20 people in this program changed the culture of the entire prison because when they were out on the yard, the other prisoners noticed the difference in them and how they were interacting with each other. And people started crashing the course. They wanted to know what was going down.
Oh,
And
I love this, Jan.
then what really
Good.
got me going, Will, was the shooting in Madison last December.
Mm.
That killed me. The police came out and said, does anyone know what that girl was feeling? And I thought, she reached out online for help, for connection, and was directed toward violence. If my program had been there, she would have talked in my program, but it wasn't available. And I thought, that's it. I've got to start serious outreach. And I've been spending 10 to 20 hours a week ever since then.
Well, you have, and thank you for your courage and your commitment, Jan, because it's very rarely that I come across someone whose professional life has been dedicated to helping people solve these kinds of problems, who has taken on a second professional life, which is spreading the word without any strings attached. And so I want to stay here because I know that our listeners are mostly principals, education leaders, aspiring leaders, some experienced, some veterans, some districts, some superintendents, but they also serve within schools where every single day they're running into some of the situations that you're describing, or they have people on their staff who have skill sets where they're trying to bring students together, but maybe they need stronger tools, sometimes school counselors, sometimes therapists, but sometimes just classroom teachers. So talk to us a little bit more about some of the important takeaways from and do you call it the Magic Circle curricula?
The magic circle, we turn problems into puzzles,
Okay.
is for K through 5.
Okay.
Then I have transformation through education, the self-empowerment and awareness curricula for the older students, but I've incorporated the concept of puzzles into that because we so often look at what is wrong with us or wrong with someone else, as opposed to looking at what don't we know here. Scientists are curious when they come across a puzzle that they don't understand, an event or an, a reaction that doesn't meet their expectations. But when it comes to human behavior, thank you to Mr. Freud's choice of profession, we tend to look at ourselves or someone else as unhealthy or problematic as opposed to ignorant. And so my program seeks to resolve that just by teaching the concepts of understanding the self and the appropriate satisfying responses of how to work through not only managing our own reactions, but connecting with and working through relationship issues with other people.
So let's get granular. Let's pretend that you're sitting with an educator who has, and you can pick the grade or the the the, the age of the child or a young person. And what are just a few strategies that you have found helpful for teachers or principals in helping students to avoid being sabotaged by their own emotions? And I'm using your words because those are words that you've taught me.
Okay, so again, I have that idea. People come in tortured. Children, they're filled with reactive emotion. They don't have the words and they don't have the tools to express or deal with their what gets stirred in them. So we can try to suppress their reaction. We can judge them or punish them, or we can take this as our gift, that here we have this little being in front of us who has the opportunity to learn something they didn't know. To me, that's what I live for, both as a parent, a grandparent, and an educator. When someone is tortured by a reaction, that's where I get to come in and be the lifesaver. That's where I get to connect them with their own wisdom. And so someone sitting in front of me with an emotional reaction that doesn't work to get them where they want to go. I want to help them see the rightness of their feeling, not the wrongness, and how to take that rightness and deal with it in a way where there's relief, where we can feel satisfied that we're taking care of ourselves, and yet we don't have to become adversarial or tribalistic reactiveness with someone else. We don't have to be enemies. We can sit down together with this puzzle and figure things out, both within ourselves and between ourselves.
Mm. So I'm going to guess that because I've not been a part of your classes, but I'm going to guess that if I was using your curriculum, I just heard you say four things. One, that you're going to help students identify, first of all, the thing that they're experiencing and feeling so that they can, first of all, affirm what is the thing that you're feeling, what is right about that thing that you're feeling. Two, how do you deal with that in a way that's going to actually bring some sense of relief or expression that's not harmful? Three, how do you avoid turning that into tribalism or division or reactive behavior, but turn it into something productive? And four, how do you do that with someone else so that together we're within a community, we're walking through this in a way that can bring us closer to one another so that this whole thing goes full circle. Am I following you correctly, Jan?
Perfect. It's perfect. Absolutely what this curriculum does, what both of them do.
Okay, so share some success stories because I'm going to give you permission to brag, Jan. I want you just to tell us some of the different organizations and groups that you've been working with and where this is spreading, because I know it's a passion of yours to make sure this isn't something you just keep. So talk a little bit about where you're seeing some successes.
The biggest success, and it's thrilling, is when I talk with someone like you, because you get it. You instantly get the concepts and you see the value, and it really, it's like creating a different paradigm through which to see human evolution, rather than looking at in the old fashioned man is a sinner, man is bad, to look at it as we look at our babies. Our babies just haven't learned yet. They're innocent, they're ignorant, and we have the gift and the responsibility of guiding them, not by crushing their spirits or judging them or making them afraid, but building on their own sense of self in a constructive way. That's why I call it emotional toilet training, because there's nothing wrong with being toilet trained. It's just not as pleasant if you're not in the bathroom. So if you take the worst of reactions that our body has to offer and guide it properly, it's not a problem. It's no big deal. It's just learning to guide it. And from school administrators and school principals to state superintendents, the New York Division of Juvenile Justice just adopted my program for all of its facilities for juvenile corrections, to school administrators. It's just so thrilling to me because this makes sense. And when it's applied, people, first of all, the most important thing is they connect with their own innocence. They can let go of judgment and shame, because that contorts us. That makes us feel unworthy. It blocks us from just the joy of learning. Think about kindergartners. Are they ashamed that they don't know how to do math or they can't read? No, they're proud. They're one of the big kids. They get to go to school now. Why would we not be proud? Why would we not be excited? Oh, I got so angry at my best friend the other day. I wonder what happened. I wonder how else I might have handled it, where it would have worked out better. That's the excitement that my program allows. That's why I put for the magic circle. We turn problems into puzzles. I refuse to have problems in my life. I got some pretty big puzzles, but no problems. I got some hard things I don't like, but no problems. Big puzzles.
Well, Jan, I know, thank you for that. That I also know that I'm going to brag for you on some things that because I know you've given us some broad brushstrokes, but I mean, right now your curriculum is something that you've introduced into a New York prison system, a Canadian prison system, a French Embassy International School, a California school administrator of the year that's using it with her students, a principal who's printing stories out to the students through their, to all the kids through that campus that are. So there's a lot of organizations and leaders who are inviting you in. Um, give someone who's listening an idea, because this is the other thing I appreciate about you. Because when we met off the recording, I was asking you, okay, how can people link to you and how can they get your information? And you're like, whoa, Will, if someone wants to use my content, they're going to become my friend, and I'm going to help them understand what this looks like in practice. So let's pretend I'm reaching out to you and I'm like, Jan, I'd like to use this in my school. What would that look like? Where would that conversation go for someone who's already interested in, like, wow, how do I bring Jan into the relationship with me and my school?
I would say fantastic. I am here. Not only is my curriculum free, but my consultation, should you need it, is free. Send me your email. I will send you my curriculum and then let's talk. And you got it. I do have strings. And the strings is I want to know you're using it because that gives me happiness. That's
Yes. Mhm.
And please don't feed it into AI. I had someone say she was going to try to break it down into smaller segments, so she was going to feed it into AI. I said, oh, please just use me for that.
Oh, Jan, you're such a breath of fresh air. And you told me that before too. Like, yeah, I do have strings attached, Will, and that is that I want to know who's using my content because it brings me so much joy. Well, you brought me a lot of joy, Jan, and I know our listeners too. Before we wrap up, I just also want to take an opportunity. There's always an underlying motivation for people who do their passions. And so I know there's a Jan story too. And so feel free to share as much as you want about some of those underlying motivations that have just given you so much passion for the work you do.
I can't stand feeling helpless. There's so much that we are ultimately helpless about. The only real power that cannot be taken away from us is to know our own truth and to share it if we choose to. Everything else can be taken away from us, but not that. So I've been balancing accepting my absolute ultimate helplessness with living as fully as I can. And that means doing everything I can because I will die at peace. Whatever happens, however far this spreads, I will not lie on my deathbed kicking myself that I didn't try. So I'm successful from the very first moment I tried to do outreach because I was doing it. And that brings me joy. It brings me relief and peace of mind. When I also hear of it positively impacting people, it's like, oh my God in heaven, I cannot believe how blessed I feel. When I heard about that principal, and that was just last night, she loved my stories. I sent it to her because she had a child in her school that was raped, an elementary school child. And I couldn't stand it. The pain was just made me beside myself. I sent her these two stories of empowerment and being able to separate from the behavior of other people, which have been very impactful for people, adults and children. And I said, if it ever feels appropriate, would you print them and give them to that little girl? And if not, I understand, but I would just appreciate it if you could. She emailed me back right away that she was going to print it and post it on a bulletin board for all of her students. And I was beside myself. It's like my heart was just filled. How could anything make me happier? I wrote those stories for my two granddaughters, and now all these children that I'll never see are going to have a chance to get these empowering messages. I mean, it makes me want to cry right now.
Well, it makes me want to right now encourage anybody that's listening who's already thinking what I am. I want to read those stories to reach out to Jan. And so, Jan, as we wrap up, I want you to be able to tell listeners your email address or your LinkedIn profile, how they can reach you.
Okay.
And then any other parting words of advice or thoughts that you want to share with listeners as they work towards building communities that are trying to prevent trauma before it happens.
My email is janharrell.now@outlook.com. Lots of R's and lots of L's, Harrell. And LinkedIn, it's just me, Jan Harrell, PhD. I would just love to hear from anyone. You don't have to feel like you're committed to doing it. I have the energy and the desire to share with you and for us to work together to make a difference. I think one of the things happening in our world right now is we've descended into tribalism because we are lacking this essential aspect of our education. And so we're left reacting and then feeling hurt and bewildered and irritated at the differences between us. And we simply have lost the ability. And I don't know, honestly, if it's that we lost the ability or we're now at that phase of human development where we need to create that ability. And I think the way to do it is by expanding our education process to include emotional self-awareness. I would love to hear from any of you. And it doesn't commit you. I won't bother you. I won't anything if you decide not to. But please reach out to me.
Well, Jan Harrell, I'm just smiling because it's so refreshing to be in the room with someone who is committed to combating, I'm not going to say it that way, who's committed to an alternative to tribalism, which you know and recognize is going to first be started with trusting relationships. And your commitment in this project to doing it in a way that invites people in and also requires them to first build a relationship with you before even stepping into using your curriculum or your lessons. And what I love about it is that you're modeling it over and over and over again. The same things that you're that you're teaching, you're consistently modeling. And I can say this because we've talked off the air, but I've talked to my listeners too, that of course my mind immediately goes into, oh, how can you streamline this and scale it? And how can you get it on your website? And Jan's like, yeah, that's great, Will, but I'm going to practice what I'm teaching. And so anybody that's listening right now, I just want to encourage you to go back to any part of this conversation that you want to hear again. You can rewind to be so encouraged. But two, think about sharing it with your team members and asking that question, what are the things that Jan is talking about here that we need to be chewing on? And then take that next step, which is, okay, which of us needs to reach out and have a conversation and see where this goes next? Because I guarantee that somebody's going to be reaching out and saying, I want those stories too, that I can share with my students and my faculty. So Jan, thank you so much for the opportunity to introduce you to Principal Matters listeners. And Principal Matters listeners, thank you for doing what matters. And we'll talk to you again soon.
Thank you so much, Will. Really, I appreciate being with you.
Thank you for listening to today's episode of Principal Matters, the School Leaders Podcast. If you enjoyed the show, would you take a moment and like, share, subscribe, or leave us a review? In fact, if you share it out with a friend, even more people can become a part of these conversations. Sign up for our newsletter at williamdparker.com for even more free resources. And don't forget to check out our website to learn more about our books, professional development offerings, Grow Academies, masterminds, executive coaching, and keynote presentations. Wow, let's keep learning together. And thank you for doing what matters.
Principal Matters.